Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and today is Thursday, February 6, 2020, and this is your Dracut Connection. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Zimini, former selectman from Dracut, and I am lead co-host for tonight's exciting show. We have so much to talk about. Dracut Connection is a political talk show aimed at keeping people and voters involved and informed as to what's going on in town and nationally, and as well as the state. Tonight we have our co-host is George Bogue, community activist as well as a union boss. George Bogue.
How you
Good
doing?
evening, George. And we also have with us the very, very affable and friendly and intelligent community guy, Gordy Scott.
Thank you, John.
Back from vacation.
Yes.
And
Feeling good. Batteries are charged.
Batteries are charged and raring to go. But ladies and gentlemen, we have Brian Bond is on vacation in the Caribbean.
Wow.
With his wife on a 14-day cruise.
Whoa.
Talk about
Hopefully
being
he doesn't
elite.
hope he doesn't get the coronavirus.
There ain't no. We had that discussion.
But if you are going to get isolated, a cruise ship is the place to be.
do, yeah.
I know one thing. There ain't no mountains down in the Caribbean that he's going to be climbing. So we're not even going to be
climbing the
discussing the
stairs.
mountains.
You'll be climbing the stairs.
It's pretty tall ships. They
All
can
I know is
climb
he's been posting some stuff online, and he had a humongous steak rib, some kind of steak last night. That he's going to come back about 30 pounds heavier. But before we get started with our show, we're proud to have with us tonight and every show, we have with us Sean Kelly from Mill City Weather. How are you, Sean?
Very good.
That's great. Anything happening in your life? Anything exciting?
Just a few things, but other than that, it's just weather.
Hey,
Working, of course, right?
the weather is exciting, right?
Oh yeah.
All right, Sean, take it away.
Yeah. So this is the snowfall totals from today. Haverhill coming in on top at 2 inches. So this is between 1 and 3 that we are forecasting here for the Merrimack Valley. Lowell coming in just under 2 inches, and Dracut 2, 1.5, and Pepperell 2, 1.4. So that was the snowfall totals for the storm. We do have a wind advisory. That's one thing to note. This is going to be for tomorrow between 2 and 10 p.m. on Friday, and that's going to be for the eastern side of Massachusetts, going all the way down into south of Boston. And take a look at the wind, and there it is. Gust up to 40, maybe even 50 miles an hour gust. Very possible for eastern Mass tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow night. So make sure you charge up your phones and your electronics, of course, right? And taking a look at the Futurecast radar, tomorrow and overnight tonight, rain, heavy at times too, especially tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. And as the storm tries to pull away, you can see the snow on the back end right there. And there it is, as it tries to move in on the back end tomorrow evening, between 4 and 7 p.m. And it could pick up maybe according to an inch, and that would be, 1 inch would be more isolated, probably towards Derry and Keene, New Hampshire, and maybe Manchester. As we look at the forecast for tonight, dropping down to around 33 degrees, not that much. Rainy, again, heavy at times. Wind's going to start to pick up 5 to 10 miles an hour as we head into your Friday. Rainy and breezy. And then we get into your Friday night, early afternoon, of course. Snow early, changing over to clearing sky as we head into your Friday night. And into your Saturday, this is going to be a pick of the weekend, 30 degrees for a high temp. So it's going to be kind of chilly for most of the weekend. Especially on Saturday night, look at that, dropping down to 7 degrees. As we look at your 8-day forecast, Saturday again, pick of the weekend. Next week, especially next Tuesday, back into the mid to upper 40s, and next week could be another storm brewing. But right now, look, that would be rain. And that's it for everybody. Back to you guys in the studio.
Hey, Sean, let me ask you a question, Sean, before you go away. Am I in pretty good shape? I did not shovel my driveway today in anticipation of rain. My wife was criticizing me today. You didn't shovel the driveway.
So we do have Friday night, and look at that.
46.
Temps not going to drop down. So there will be a flash freeze on any untreated surfaces Friday night into Saturday. So again, if you have ice melt, definitely put some down.
Awesome,
You're
Sean.
going to need it.
Awesome, Sean. Thanks again. Nice to have you.
Nice to
Good
have you,
guy.
Sean. Great
Yeah,
job.
thanks.
Thank you, Sean. That was Sean Kelly from the Mill City Weather, and we're happy to have him on board with us every show to give us the 8-day forecast
That's awesome.
going in. Isn't that awesome?
That's awesome.
Does a great job.
So it looks like no rain for the New Hampshire primary.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Everybody will be happy with that, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
let's
except
get
the ones that lose.
We're going to get into that a little bit later, but let's get into what's really going on today. There have been some reverberations and some bombshells since Monday in Town Hall, and most of it has surrounded around the choice or the selection committee going forward. I guess the selection committee, chosen by the members of the Board of Selectmen, had their meetings early on. They selected a certain amount of people to go forward for interviews
do we know
before the
how
committee.
many?
We don't know exactly.
I heard
but
5 was the number.
No, I heard about 12 were
Really?
being interviewed by but I'm not sure because I haven't heard definitely. But about 12 were being interviewed by the selection committee, and they were going to whittle it down to 4 or 5 candidates and move them forward. So they did that for the last 2 weeks. They've been doing their thing, interviewing people in secret session. Nobody's supposed to know who's in there, although everybody knew that Ann Vandal, the current interim town manager, who is also the town treasurer and CFO, she announced that she was a candidate for the job. She's the only one that's announced for the candidate, that she's a candidate for the job. So that kind of put her out there. You know what I mean? But they have been whittling it down, and I guess over the weekend and on Monday, the Collins Center sent out notices to those candidates who were not moving forward, as well as those candidates who were going to move forward, because they had to notify them, and the people going forward had to sign documents to release the Collins Center to go out and do the background checks. So I guess Monday, when the interim town manager, Ann Vandal, got notice, you could hear the explosions. She hit the roof, from what I understand, and there was just it was just a totally unprofessional type of look. I like Ann Vandal as an individual and as a person. She's a good person. She's always been good to me, and she's been decent for the town until recently. I have issues with her on the procurement issue, but to explode and threaten to resign on the spot, and supposedly there's rumors out there that she threatened to leave by Friday. It was so bad that people at Town Hall and on the Board of Selectmen, particularly her godfather, the person who wants to make her the manager, supposedly went nuts trying to get Jesse Forcier to force the Board of Selectmen into an emergency meeting to discuss the personnel issue of Ann Vandal resigning. And how unprofessional could that be? That she would not stay and do her job. But you know, if all of this that we're hearing is true, and it's
Right.
coming from several sources, several very reliable and good sources, so I'm pretty confident that it's true, that she went ballistic, and that there's still some rumor out there that she's probably going to leave. But they were trying to have an emergency executive session to discuss personnel issues. What's the personnel issue? First of all, if she's resigning, she's not gone yet. You know, there's no emergency in that. If she just walked off the job and left the town in lurch, how bad would that be? And if that was the case, then maybe we have an emergency that we have to have somebody at the helm. But not when she says, I'm leaving, I'm not going to be back until I'm leaving on Friday or whatever. You wait till it happens. It's not like, God forbid, she died or something. You know, it's
Well,
not
she
like
must
a
have received
catastrophe.
notice then. I
She
assume.
did receive notice.
I
and-
saw something in the paper that.
Yes. So, you know, I throw it out there for discussion, guys, because, I mean, she received notice and then she exposed that she wasn't a candidate going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she handled it well, but I do think that, you know, there should always be an internal candidate, you know, so now when it goes to the board, you know, they're gonna have to pick a new town manager. So, I mean, if they're looking for continuity, they're not gonna have a candidate for that. So I mean, that's why I was wondering how many. If they pick 3 people, well, all right. It might be hard to narrow down to 3 or to 2. But I mean, if they're picking 5 people, I think she should have been one of the finalists.
Well, we don't know what the process is or what the process has been in there, but I've been through it before with the Collins Center, and they're pretty good at how they do things. The only thing I have a question about is why did the Collins Center announce or send out those letters so soon, or emails to candidates that were not going forward? Why did they do that so quickly? Why couldn't they have waited until they had announced who was moving forward and who was not moving forward? In other words, just do your background checks, and then when you're ready to submit it to the board, you make the announcement.
Right. Well, my take on the thing is, look, she was good enough, right, for them to make her interim town manager. So, my opinion on this thing, she should be one of the finalists. If they said they wanted 5, then you make 6. If she wasn't really one of the ones that made the cut,
Even if they made 5, you'd pick 4 other people and her.
Whatever, however they want to do it.
If it was 3, that might be a little tight. Then you do 3 plus 1.
I say, if they say we're going to pick 3, you make it 4
Gentlemen,
because give her the benefit of the doubt.
Gentlemen, we're in a process. You're sitting down and you charged a committee who you respect by being chosen by the Board of Selectmen, and I think it's a very fine committee, and you let that committee go forward and do their job, and their job was to interview. And if they had 5 candidates who were better than Ann Vandal in the interview, then she should not be a candidate going forward.
But again,
the courtesy, George, with all due respect, the courtesy of having Ann Vandal in the mix came when she was one of the 12. But that's as far as it should go.
The final decision is up to the board. It's not up to the committee. So, the people on the committee, people on the board, like I say, if they want an internal candidate, they should always, I deal with this at work, people getting passed over for jobs. And,
This is the second time now.
It leads to well, I don't know if she actually applied the first time, because I don't think she was eligible.
She wasn't eligible.
They changed the rule. They changed the qualifications after the fact, so she's eligible this time. But like I say, one of the biggest problems I have at work with human relations is people get hurt feelings from being passed over. People get hurt feelings from performance reviews, all sorts of things. But from a continuity standpoint, I thought Jim Duggan did a pretty good job. He was a little abrasive. So maybe you bring in someone internal who's a little bit better at dealing with people. And then, that gives you a little bit of continuity going forward. But now, like I say, whoever it is going to be an outsider most likely, and we're going to go back to square one.
I just think she deserves to be one of the finalists. That way you have someone to compare against. She can come in and interview first, and then the other candidates that you think are stronger, let them interview after her, and then you compare her to the other candidates. And if it's that much of a difference, it'll be obvious. If you watch back the interviews, it should be pretty obvious to her.
Well,
but I think she at least deserves the chance to.
Well, I totally disagree with you guys on that, because then you are usurping what you have charged your committee to do. And I agree with you, George. They do have the final say. Now, if they go in there and they publicly interview the next 4 or 5 candidates, whoever they are, and they decide, God, there's nobody here that's really that good, we're going to reopen it. And then they can invite Ann to come in if they wanted to. But to just now stop everything, have an emergency meeting, and try to go ahead and try to jam her in there after you just had a committee work tirelessly for a month to do the job that you wanted them to do, I think that's wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't agree to have emergency meeting or anything like that. Like I say, at this point to now reopen the process, that would just be a complete fiasco. So it seems like the die is cast at this point. I say though, if I had been on that committee, I would have urged that there should be an internal candidate.
Well, what? Right. They had I'm sure.
I would have too.
By the way, I did not invite Phil here tonight on purpose, because he's the chairman of that committee, and I did not want to put him in a position where he might have to say, he would have to sit here and not say anything, because he's sworn to a confidentiality at this level for all of the candidates and the town. And at first, when I first heard that Ann knew that she wasn't a final candidate, I said, wow, somebody somebody leaked it out. And then after I did a little more research, I found out that she actually leaked it out herself.
Yeah, I kind of had that suspicion from, originally CAP reported it, and then the Sun reported it.
Right.
They also said like her continued employment was at issue, and I figured, well, that sounds like that's coming from her.
Well, now let me throw this out to you. Now, given the fact that under a high-pressure situation, she, and the way she acted, the unprofessional manner in which she acted during this last 4 or 5 days, I think she's even taken a couple days off. I could be wrong, but I was told that she was so upset, she took a day or so off. But she was in training for procurement. Again, I like Ann. I like her a lot as an individual, as a person. She's always treated me well. But to act in that manner, to me, under pressure, that's a disqualification.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly
a
a bad
disqualification
look, yeah.
at that point, because you exploded like that. I mean, come on. Now, I also heard through the grapevine that there was a push by someone in town hall, and I suspect we know who that could be. Someone trying to stir the pot that wanted to start a petition by the town hall employees demanding that Ann be appointed the town manager. What say you on that?
I don't think you can appoint her, but I think she should be offered the opportunity to apply for the job.
She did apply.
You
for
might
the job.
just say, look, she's not a final candidate. She's not.
Right.
But then you might say, well, then why go through the process if you're not going to pick her anyway? But I just think she deserves the ability to be able to apply.
Well, she did. She got that. She got the application. She had the ability to apply. She went through the interview, and she didn't make the cut. And the 5 members of that board were appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
I mean, that's a good point, right? Because obviously those 12 people, or how many ever there were, applied, and if she didn't cut the mustard there, I guess, well,
yeah, there's got to
writing's
be a
on the
cutoff
wall,
somewhere,
right?
Got to be a cutoff somewhere. What say you about the petition?
Yeah, I've never found employee petitions to carry much weight or get very far with management.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, management gets their back up at that point, and they
Yeah.
dig in and won't yield.
But I think cooler heads prevailed, and I understand that one particular member of the Board of Selectmen who I did speak to was vehemently opposed to the executive session emergency meeting because, like I said, what's the emergency? There is no real emergency. I'm going to try to check and see if I have any messages here. Yeah, there's a couple people that are not agreeing with you guys on whether or not Ann should have went forward if that's the case. But that remains to be seen.
Well, I don't know what the process was. If
Right.
there was 12 candidates and they didn't get a chance to speak,
No, they
just
all
looked
did.
at their qualifications
No,
and said, "Hey,
that's
these
not-
are the okay." So
that's not what happened.
As long as she had an opportunity to,
Oh, she had an interview, absolutely.
Well,
to interview, I think
maybe
that's
she
the-
really bombed the interview. I don't
Right,
know.
right.
But again, like I said,
and that
I
can
just-
happen. I mean, but as long as I would be against it if they just said, "Hey, let's look at everyone's resume
Listen,
and qualifications,"
yeah, no, I
and
just,
say,
you know-
"No, these let's put these 7 aside. These are the
Having
best."
dealt with personnel issues and things like that in the past, I
Look
always feel there should be an internal candidate. Even if they never get picked, they should always have that option.
Well, I think you're right if they rise to the qualifications of the others and rise in the interview. I like to advance the internal candidate, the Dracut person, but if they get into an interview and they bomb, I mean, it's up to you. We've all been in interviews where we weren't chosen.
Right, yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So I mean, you move on. You don't act unprofessionally and go nuts.
Yeah, as long as they were given a chance
Yeah,
to
they
interview
absolutely were. But
Yep.
one of the things with you don't let the inmates run the asylum, right? So how effective would she be if she was chosen because the Board of Selectmen all of a sudden said, we're going to have an emergency meeting and get her on there, and we're going to push her forward, and then all of a sudden she becomes the manager? How effective would she be in managing those people?
Like I say, at this point, the die is cast, and they're
Yeah.
going to have to go in a different direction. But then also, she threatened to quit. Even if she doesn't quit,
Yeah.
does she now start looking for another job? Again,
I
I mean,
think-
I've dealt with people that were unhappy that they were passed over, and within months they've found a new job somewhere else.
I think the new manager would be,
Yeah, is the new manager going to be comfortable
the
having
new
her
manager
there?
would have to try to find another person to
Yeah.
be in that spot. You have to. I mean, that's a red flag for the new person, whoever it is, male or female, that comes in. She's going to be undermining whatever the new manager does, no matter what. The other thing I wanted to say was, look at, Ann's been the treasurer and the CFO of the town for a number of years. She's been the assistant manager. To me, one of the glaring things in this whole procurement thing is that no one had the fortitude or the ethics to stand up to the former manager or to a department head and tell them what the procurement issues were and what the procurement, they should have known what the procurement procedures were. We should not be in this pickle that we're in through procurement, both with getting equipment, fences at the fire at the police station, and also the hay scandal, not having,
John, I
procurements
know
for that.
from personal experience they knew the policy.
Absolutely.
Because I was the president of Dracut Basketball, and when I would order like T-shirts for kids, they would say, "Hey, you just can't put this." When I first took it over, I didn't know, so I took over the job, and I said I put a PO in to get, I went to the local place in Dracut and put shirts in. They said, "You need 3 quotes."
Do you agree that there's a fiduciary responsibility for those
Yeah,
people?
I understood why they did ask me for it, but I didn't know, but I was just told once, and then I said, okay, going
Right.
forward, I'll always provide 3 quotes.
So when
and
they-
then a couple years, once Jim Duggan took over, they said, oh, you don't need to do that anymore. We don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, that makes it easier for me. If you say I don't have to do it, I'll just give you 1 quote. We'll sole source it through our vendor, and then we'll go forward. So
That's one issue. The other issue I have is...
So I know they knew the rule. It wasn't.
Yeah. So the other issue, the whole procurement thing is a disaster for the town. It's a disaster for the town, disaster for the Board of Selectmen. George, Joe DeRocco stood up at a meeting or sat at a meeting and announced that he knew for a year that the procurement issue wasn't being handled properly. He went to the town manager, who was his subordinate, and demanded that he do something and allow his friends who were allegedly complaining to him for not being able to be eligible for those procurement issues on the hay and on whatever else it was. Right? So he went to his subordinate to do it, and then he waited a year before he did anything. Doesn't he have responsibility for that also? Doesn't he?
Yeah, no, you would think.
You would think. I mean,
If it's important enough to talk to him, it's important enough to
but you
follow up.
waited a year. You
Yeah,
tried to bully him into taking your friends, and then when he didn't do it, you put it publicly, and you didn't tell the other members of the board. You just went ahead and exposed it publicly. You should have done it the time you heard it, the minute you heard it.
Yeah, well, you speak to him and you give him, a month or 2 to fix it, and then you follow up on it. But yeah, you don't wait a year.
Yeah. So the other thing that I had a problem with is this whole business with the police department and the fire department. If you're part of the administration, you're part of the problem. Justin George, David Chartrand, they all had issues with the former administration, and rightfully so. And now it's going to come home to roost, and the town and the taxpayers are going to pay dearly when it comes down to that. And that was another issue I had with her. If you don't have the backbone to stand up and say, hey, look, I have a moral, an ethical, and a fiduciary
Legal.
responsibility.
Legal
responsibility. I'll give you an example. The issue with the insurance trust fund. When I sat on that board, there was an issue that the manager was taking money from the trust fund to balance the budget, which was totally illegal. We were told that by our attorneys. We were told that by an expert in the field. I went crazy in an executive session and told him that, that's impossible. You shouldn't, that should never happen. And, Ann was then still there. She was a treasurer. She should have been able to, she shouldn't allow that to go forward like that. She just shouldn't. I mean, the fire department was absolutely, and they were right. And thank God they didn't go to the AG and they didn't sue the town, because the penalty is not only a criminal, it's a fine. of 10 times the amount. We would have been in the hole for $10 million.
Well,
$10
and
million.
say what you will about Dennis Piendak taking the big golden parachute, but that's going to be a drop in the bucket now after what Duggan left behind.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
exactly. Yep.
and
So-
we didn't have these problems when Dennis Piendak was the town manager.
Yep.
If you remember.
So I
We
was
didn't have this
listening.
issue.
I was listening this morning to Teddy Panos on the radio, and he was talking, and they were talking about the whole issue, and they were kind of tiptoeing around it, and they weren't really, saying the real truth of it, and they were saying, well, she should have a chance to stay if she wants, and I give her a chance to stay, but I'm afraid of what would go on. I mean, I think she needs to make a decision to move on to another pasture somewhere and not be involved in Dracut after this is over. And she should do it in a professional manner. Fill out $175,000 at the rate of $175,000 a year.
No matter how mad I was, I wouldn't have just up and
I would have bit my tongue, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if she's going to get that kind of a
No, I mean,
salary
you
anywhere
can
else.
understand how she could be upset, but you don't do.
You don't
if
do that.
What was alleged to had happened.
Totally
I mean, you might go home and yell at your husband or your
Yep.
kids or whatever. So, talk about it there, but I wouldn't do it at work.
Yep. Now, earlier today, I was speaking to a friend of mine, and we were talking, and he sent me a text, and I told him that I was going to use the text because it says it's been a mess for almost 3 years, and it's right. And they gave a superior reviews and huge raises for 2 years to the town manager. For 2 years, he and his team, including Ann, were the best thing since sliced bread, as of just last May, when they were giving out raises. Then in October, they show him the door. I mean, come on, it's time for accountability. Yep, and he's absolutely right. Absolutely right that how do you go from May to October, and the guy's showing the door?
Well, it was a rough 6 months. A lot of stuff came out in that 6 months.
Did it ever? Did it ever? So do we want to move on from this subject? Do you have anything else to say about the manager selection? Now they'll go into the next phase. I think they're looking at maybe getting through the background checks. That could take a little bit of time, and I'm probably going to say maybe within the next 2 weeks they'll be bringing.
How does that
names
process
forward.
work, John? You probably remember when you were selectman. Do they
Yep.
come in front of them? Is it like
Yes.
a lot at the? And they
it's-
usually pick like one or two, right? They interview
we interviewed all the candidates
at one night in one. night?
No, we did it a couple nights.
Over
We did
across a couple
nights.
meetings,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, you got to give enough time to everybody and let the selectmen ask the questions
Yeah.
that they want to ask and need to ask, and then there's site visits and things.
But I'm
of that
wondering
nature.
because what I've seen in the past is they kind of have a template of questions.
Well, yeah, sometimes they do. Sometimes you
Because
set up
then,
a template.
then how do they pick what order they go in? Because if I was a candidate and I was going on the second session, I think I'd be watching this channel
Of course.
to watch what the questions are and then prepare myself.
Well,
right?
yeah, well, that's true. But you know what? You have to start somewhere, and I totally agree with these interviews being public. I would not, at that level, they have to be public. You have to let the people see how they react.
Transparency, right?
Transparency. And you ask the same questions, but there are questions that rise out of questions or out of answers.
Right.
Correct?
Follow-up
Right.
questions and
Yeah. So if you
whatever.
got a set base amount of questions that you're going to ask all the candidates, and then their answers will send you on whichever way you're going to go. I'm sure. So, any news about the procurement issue? Any news? I hear that the AG has proposed a settlement with the town in the guise of a consent decree
Right.
that has to be approved by both sides and has to be approved by the court. So that, I think, is in the process. I know that those who have seen it, it's a pretty thick document, that there's a lot of things going on in that document. And I think that a lot of it has to do with training and making sure that it doesn't happen again. And
Any
surpri-
fines, you think? With that, or?
I don't think the state's gonna do that. I think the state will say, if you agree to all these things, if you start going back and forth with them, then they're going to get tougher with you.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have
Yeah,
maybe
this is
some
what it is. If you
prosecutions.
agree, we'll check back in
Yeah,
with you in 6
they
months.
really have
and-
the upper hand if they got all of the proof, you
Right.
know, and you violated the law. I think you better
Might be a slap on the wrist, just as
just
you know,
take
make sure
take
you
your
do all
poison.
these things in this document, and if
And
you
then
follow through,
straighten out, go forward.
we'll check back
Yeah.
in with you in a couple months and see how.
I think they're
progress
going to
you
have
made.
an overseer that's going to make sure. They think part of it is making sure that you hire a procurement person and things of that nature. The hay scandal, that's been kind of quelled, but I will tell you this, that I know that there is some external issues going on, and I know that Brian Bond has been in contact with a couple of people who are interested in bringing forth some more information. So we're in the process of ferreting that out, and before we make any announcement on that, or Brian makes any announcement on that, he's going to go through the process and talk to people and what have you. And I know Brian's been in touch with people over at the AG's office as well as myself and things of that nature on this issue, because it's a big issue. Both all the procurement, not just the hay, but all the procurement has been an issue. Now, let me ask you this. I'll throw this out. We got about 25 minutes left. Does the hay scandal, the procurement issue, and the manager's selection, does that become an issue that will affect the upcoming election?
I think it
Yeah,
will.
I don't see how it. I mean, it's an issue. It gets talked about. I mean, you know, if they all say the same thing, it's not an issue. But I imagine that there'll be some difference of opinion on it. And then
And if I was a
goes
new
on.
face coming in for selectmen, I would attack them
Oh,
to the
yeah.
hilt about that issue. Like, why didn't you stand up? Why you saw this?
Why didn't the Board of
selectmen handle this the right
Yeah.
way? This wasn't handled the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that there's any particular targeted member of the board that might take the heat? Is there anybody? I
well, I mean,
spoke
you know,
to
for the election, the only one up is Tammy, and she's kind of the one on the outs anyway. So I don't think it hits her. I mean,
no, it doesn't. No, agree.
I mean, the two obvious ones are Jesse because he's in charge, and Joe because he brought it up.
Right.
Yeah, and Jesse seemed to have more knowledge than the other board members when the issue came up before the board.
Well,
it
I
was
think
brought
he
up.
should have too, because he sat on so many committees that he should know.
He should know what the procurement is.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
right.
should know what the procurement issues are. Yeah, but you know what? They'll say that we're trashing them. Oh, we trashed them. You know what I mean? No, it's not trashing you when we're telling you the truth. We're telling the people the truth. This is what went on.
And they'll
it's-
probably just say, we assumed they were following the.
But that
And
Procurement
you know what happens when you assume.
Yeah.
yes,
right.
absolutely.
But I'm just thinking what their defense would be. I mean, I don't know, if they go down
Right.
and check on what, how the town hall's running on a weekly basis or what have you. But
So let's talk about the incumbents. The two incumbents that are running, that are up for re-election, are Tammy Dristelaris and Allison Hughes. Now, Tammy has still not made up her mind, and she's going through a process in her mind whether she wants to go for another term or not, and that's fine, all well and good. And I know that Allison Hughes has made a decision, and she's going to announce that soon. And I'm going to predict that she will not be a candidate unless somebody pulls the string and says you have to be a candidate in this race. So far, there is one candidate that I know of that has pulled papers. That's Allison Janess. I have not heard whether Joe Espinal has pulled papers.
I heard that he was running.
He's told people that he's running, but I have not heard whether he's pulled papers. And
Johnny
I know-
Joyce, of course.
I haven't.
He
well,
had it
Johnny-
on Facebook last week.
Oh, he
that
did
he's
say
running,
it.
Yeah.
So Johnny Joyce is in. That's
Yeah,
three.
so he's
and
going to go knocking on all those doors
yeah,
again.
and he'll get 300 votes, maybe not in this group.
The
Might
more
not.
people, the less votes. he'll
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
Then you have Heather Santiago Hutchins. She's a candidate. She's already been announced that on.
Wow, that's going to be
media.
interesting if that many people.
And you also have Mark Pease, so you have 5. And I can tell you tonight that Phil Tebow has told me that he is a candidate. So
Wow.
Phil Tebow will be a
Breaking news
candidate.
here on Dracut Connection.
That's it. So, and he gave me permission to say it tonight. And he's the 6th candidate. And
Wow.
there may
That's
be a couple more.
And then if Tammy runs,
There'll
let's
be
just say
7 candidates.
And then say Allison runs, that'll be 8
8 candidates. And
Wow.
in that field,
I've never seen that many before.
well, if 8, you see, the thing is, if 8 candidates ran and 2 of them were incumbents, the 2 incumbents will be perceived as having the upper hand. I absolutely believe that. And I think at that point, you'll see a couple people
Drop out.
drop out.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know
I don't
whether...
think
I don't know,
Johnny
it's
will
been
drop
kind of, I mean,
No.
even like the Sun has been saying for months that Allison's not running. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of baked into the cake at this point.
With all due respect to you and your relationship with Johnny Joyce,
That's okay.
and, you know, look at,
Why
Johnny
doesn't- I
Joyce
don't
is a
notice
good
why-
comedian, and that's
Yeah.
where he should stay.
Right.
He should be a comedian.
Yep.
Because that's what he is. You know? And
Well, he can't make the.
do that.
His job doesn't allow him to make the meetings anyway, so I don't know.
Yeah,
why
well, he
would-
works nights, right?
Yeah, so I don't know. why
It's
he-
just
The
a
other
joke.
thing,
It's
too, I
just
mean,
a,
He
you
should
know,
just, yeah.
He
You know,
did
you
it.
should get familiar with at least a couple of issues. I mean, I don't expect him to, be
Well,
an
he-
encyclopedia.
at
but,
least
you
he's-
you should have, anyone who's running for anything should have at least 1 or 2 issues they could talk about.
Yeah.
Right.
And since he had his, my brother-in-law, John's my brother-in-law, and my other brother-in-law died of heroin overdose. So he does have that. That's one thing he cares about, and that's
Yeah.
one
Well, I
thing
mean,
he knows. He has
he's big
knowledge
on
of.
veterans. He should try to make a thing into
Right.
that. You
right.
know?
Yep.
So, anyways, you already spent too much time on Johnny Joyce. But my question to all of the candidates are, and so far, I haven't heard anybody that really come out and talked about issues that really matter to voters. It's one thing to say, here I am, I'm a townie, I grew up here, and I know a lot of people, and I know the agricultural community, and I know the schools, and I'm going to do everything above board and be transparent. And where do you stand on taxes? Where do you stand on overrides? Where do you stand on the sewer rates that are going up? Where do you stand on water rates? Where do you stand on the rainwater
Drainage, water drainage fee.
What is that?
Stormwater.
The stormwater
drainage
fee, because that's going to come back. Where do you
Is
stand
trash
on
fee coming?
the future of a trash fee? Where do you stand on? Those are issues that are very important.
Right.
Above all, the manager's issue is a big issue too. But all of those issues have to be addressed.
Where do you stand on senior housing? Where do you stand?
Gentlemen, you want to bring up senior housing. Brian Bond, myself, Kenny Martin, and others, we had a plan in place. We went to the town meeting. We got Richardson Farm. We got $3 million for seed money. We did we had all the ducks in a row. Deval Patrick was still the governor, and there was money available for senior housing. And then the powers that be, particularly Joe DeRocco, Jesse Forcier, and others, stopped it by continually delaying it, and then the money went away. Now you don't have that ability anymore, and now you're going to get a senior housing that really isn't what it should be. It really isn't what it should be. You're going to pay 60, 70, 80%.
And who are the people
instead
that
of
are going to get in?
30%.
And I'd like to see the people that are going to get in.
Where do you think they're going to get in? Who do you think they're going to get in?
The friends.
Friends of who?
Friends of the high people.
The friends of high people.
Right.
You're going to have a partner. You're going to have what they call now affordable housing, ladies and gentlemen. They call it affordable housing partnerships with a private company, and that's all well and good when you have nothing else. Something's better than nothing, but then you're going to have a private company running it at a profit, and you're going to have people who can afford to be in there because they're making their
Yeah,
pensions. They have
they'll
enough money.
Speaking of a private company making a profit, I'm so glad we use CPC money to help get that eyesore of the old town annex building. And we're going to put veterans housing in there. It's only been 3 years and it looks the same. The windows are broken over there. That building's decrepit. I don't know what they're doing with that thing.
That's still been dragging around.
Yeah, and as you
But
pointed
no one
out
asks
last,
questions. We give them all these millions of dollars.
You
and-
had pointed
and
it
what's
out at
going
the
on?
last meeting, is
Yeah.
they keep coming back for more.
Of course they keep coming back.
Well, actually, that's another issue for the candidates is the CPC tax increase.
Yeah. Right. I don't
You
think
know, I mean,
that's on the ballot.
well, that no.
Yeah, that's on the ballot.
I don't think
ballot.
it is. I don't think it is. I think that's fell by the wayside. I don't think they.
Well,
got
Warren
approval.
put it. Warren put it.
I
in.
know it
town
went through
meeting
town
voted-
meeting.
voted it.
I think it went through town meeting, but I think there was something wrong with the way it went, and I don't think that
That's
the
what I.
AG
By the way,
approved it.
that's the thing I complained about.
Right.
I actually called the attorney general's
So that would be
office.
interesting, Gordy. Maybe you should do a little research on that because that is your baby.
Yeah.
Find out if, in fact, it's going to be on the May ballot. I don't think it is. I don't because you haven't heard anything about it. I don't think it is.
Well, I called
if
them.
that
and
happens,
I called them. They told me I had to get a lawyer, but I put the seed in their ear
you got to get a lawyer for what?
to actually fight that because it wasn't written.
No, I
properly.
mean call town hall and see if it's
No,
gonna
but I
be on
mean, I
town-
did call on that.
Yeah, I know you
because
did.
when I went up, if you remember, a few years
Right.
ago, I put in a warrant article to drop it 1%, and I brought it in front of the selectmen, and James Hall at the time said, well, you can do that, but it's not written properly because you have to specifically put in there verbiage that tells the people it's not happening at the town meeting, it's happening at the next ballot. So I had to go back and I had to amend it on the floor and say this will happen. I had to put verbiage in there to basically say this will be voted on at the next.
And what happened to it?
And then, so as you
He
remember,
ruled it out of order, right?
no. So it got ruled in, and then someone made an amendment to it. We voted on the amendment,
Oh yeah.
and the amendment failed. And then it was supposed to go back to my original warrant article, and then someone called for a quorum, and there wasn't a quorum,
Oh.
and the town meeting ended. So, and then nothing ever happened with my warrant article. And then I got a call the next day from Attorney Hall, and he said, "Are you going to pursue this?" And I said, "You know what? I don't want to cost the town money, and I'm not going to pursue it
Yeah.
because they never took up my article."
So
So
what
we should have
happened-
had another
What
meeting.
happened to Shaw's amendment to
They got
raise-
voted in.
Yeah, that town meeting.
But I don't
was
think that
complete.
was properly done either, and
I don't think it was
but
either. I
that's
don't
that
agree
whole,
with it,
This
but-
whole discussion is on that, so we need to find out if it's going to be on the ballot in May, because if it is,
My
that's
thought
an
is-
issue.
I mean, if
you want to raise the taxes of the
it
people
could,
again?
it could be you haven't heard about it just because they're trying to keep it under the
Yeah,
radar.
that's why I'm saying we need to check it out to make sure.
I mean, I haven't heard it's not. So since it went through town meeting,
I'm assuming on May it's coming
yeah,
up.
not to be, I don't want to be assuming, but until I hear otherwise, I'm assuming it's on the town ballot.
Well, we need to talk. We need to find out so we can really push the issue and talk about it. Now, what other candidates do you see? Do you see any candidates coming out for selectmen?
Maybe for school committee.
Well, before we
Actually,
get to
there's no one running for school committee
so
now,
so
is
far
there?
it seems like there isn't.
So
But
what happens?
You're
Does
close
that-
to the schools. Do you? Or you used to be? Have you heard anything?
I don't think anyone wants to.
Why don't you run?
Oh no.
You'd be a great candidate.
No,
You'd
no.
be a great candidate. A referee, basketball, youth basketball referee and coach and recreational guy. You'd have a good base to start to go and run.
Well,
You'd
no.
be good at it. I think you'd be Stephen Stone's nightmare,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Go ahead, George. You were gonna
So if no one runs, what happens? There's an empty seat on the school committee?
Interesting. I think it falls back to. I'm not sure.
Do they
what-
appoint
with the chat?
someone,
They
or-
could. I don't know. I don't know if they appoint. I think it would be a special election, or you can get a last minute write-in candidate.
Yeah.
You know that, don't you? And that write-in candidate just needs to get more
10
votes.
votes. 10 votes.
No, I don't think it. Is it
I
10?
think it's 10, I think,
I don't
yeah.
think it is.
Hey, Rich Cowan, if you're listening.
There you go.
Here's your shot.
I had a friend of mine in Chelsea who
He probably
ran.
would get in.
He,
Rich Cowan.
oh, he would if he's the only candidate.
Yeah.
No, I mean really, he could. He
No,
could
he's-
have a good
yeah.
shot. But a friend of mine in Chelsea ran on a sticker campaign. He actually wrote it in, and I don't think he had 10 votes. I think he had maybe 5 or 6 votes. But he was the only candidate, and he won. It was a precinct type ward type
Imagine
thing,
that, huh?
and he won. So imagine winning by 1 vote
Yeah.
and getting in there. Yeah. So
Well, I always said when I ran, I'd be having dinner with the family, and I said, if I don't have at least 4 votes, it's going to be really uncomfortable.
know.
dinner tomorrow.
yeah, in the house it'll be really uncomfortable. Absolutely. I'm told that it's a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the school committee would appoint
Oh, okay.
between the two of them. That's what I just got a message from a very astute person. So that's good.
National.
Very good.
How about national politics?
I don't know. Is there anything going on in national? Oh, actually,
Well, I
wanna
wanted
get
to
a-
We have to talk about the
Well,
impeachment.
I want-
I do
before we
want to
get
do
to
one
that-
state thing first. Driver's licenses for illegal aliens is before one of the committees.
Are they going to pass that?
Probably. Well, they'll probably pass it. I think Baker is saying he'll veto it, but even if it doesn't go through this year, they'll be back next year.
Wow.
I mean, it just went through
Because
in
you
New
got to
York.
get the real ID, so I don't know how they can get. If,
My wife just went through hoops
amazing
with
they
that
don't-
last year. She got to the point where she actually went in with a marriage certificate, which, I mean, who uses a marriage certificate for anything? I didn't
Right.
even know they were, there.
Valid, yeah.
But, because they used her confirmation name, that wasn't valid. So she actually didn't get the real ID, so she got the regular ID.
Oh, God.
And now has to go out and get a passport. So
Right.
she could, come October, she could get on an airplane.
right.
Like,
Well,
go
that's why I
into a
said if they
government
don't
building.
if they don't get the license before October, because it's real ID requires a social security, you have to be a U.S. citizen.
Right, but the registry is now doing two-tier IDs. They do the real ID and they do a non-real ID.
So
right.
let me
So they could do
until
that.
October.
They could do that
until October.
let
right.
me ask you this
No,
question.
my wife has a regular ID, not a real ID, and it expires whatever licenses expire.
Right.
So again, if they do it with the illegals, they'll have the non-real ID.
So they can't get on a plane with it,
but they could drive a car.
Right.
I have a question for you guys, right? If they are so vehement about giving illegal aliens driver's license, and that becomes an ID, they can be identified by that. Why are the Democrats so opposed to voter ID? Why?
Because it suppresses people.
Suppresses people's rights.
It's like cleaning the voter list is voter suppression, right?
Cleaning the voter list means what to the ordinary
Cleaning the
citizen?
voter list is, people register and move or die or whatever.
Yeah.
So, when you run for office, you get a list of the voters and where they live. And, you'll find an apartment building where, there'll be 5 apartments and there'll be, 8 different families listed there. So, periodically, every 10 years or so, you go through and, oh, yeah, this person hasn't voted in 8 years. We're knocking them off the list.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that now has become, for the National Democrats, that's voter suppression.
Or this person is 125 years
Right.
old. We're knocking them off the list.
Right.
Exactly. So I wanted to get back to the regular election, for the town election for 1 minute. Do you think that the powers that be have a candidate or two in this race?
I don't know.
I think that,
Well, I'm sure they have, their list of the people that they would prefer and the people that won't, that they don't prefer.
well, if
Whether
Allison-
it's actually, like
right.
Allison Hughes was pretty much recruited by the
Warren
farmer.
Shaw,
Right.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I think that was the year, what was that? There was Tammy, Allison, Ted Cacivalon, and Cox, I think.
Johnny Joyce?
I think that
Johnny
might have been
Clark.
before his time.
It was
No,
Robert
because he
Clark.
didn't
This is
show
like
up for
6 years ago.
No, this was he did run against Allison because remember he didn't show up.
Right, but that
It
was
was
the
two-
last time
because
they
it was
were the
Bobby
incumbents.
Cox.
When
Yeah.
they both
Right,
originally
correct.
ran.
They thought they were going to shut out Tammy
Yeah.
by having Cox and Allison, and it backfired. And Cox
Well, Cox
lost.
and Teddy got into it at the debate, and as usually happens, it hurt both of them, and then Tammy and Allison got in.
Well, that's interesting because I heard today that one of the candidates for selectmen has selected a person to be their campaign manager who has strong ties to Town Hall West.
Right.
And so it's going to be interesting to see. So now Town Hall West would have that male candidate and also a female candidate. And that's a signal right there that they're looking for. They're having two two candidates in the mix. So and that never goes well when you have two candidates in there. But there's always a possibility of surprise candidates. And one of the surprise candidates that I'm going to predict tonight is someone who was on the board before and I'm saying that they are waiting to the last minute to take out the papers because they did it before and won. And I think that candidate will be Kathy Richardson. I think she will look at the field. She will say that the field is wide, large, and that with her name recognition, she could win in that.
After the
field.
Yeah,
horse
but
thing,
isn't
though,
she,
I think
doesn't she cut
Well,
into
this-
Allison Janet's vote?
I don't know. I don't know if I think it would, but I think Kathy Richardson could win in that field. And I don't think Kathy Richardson thinks in those terms.
Right.
And I don't know if there's not a strained relationship between Brian Janess and Kathy Richardson since the time that he was with her and for her. I think there might be a little bit of a strained relationship. So I don't know that for sure, but I did hear that, and I'll stand to be corrected if that's not true. But I think that Kathy Richardson would be a strong candidate just based on name recognition. Now, the horse thing, it's only an issue if somebody brings it up.
Which
Oh, it'll
they-
be brought up.
It'll
Well-
be brought up, but it also, what was that now?
Who would bring it up?
5-10 years ago?
anyone that runs against it.
Oh, I don't think anybody in that race would bring it up.
Johnny Joyce would.
Yeah, someone will. But again,
That's like a squeaky door.
But like-
That's all
but-
that's going to
but-
be.
But
It's
like
like a
I
squeaky
say,
door.
that whole incident was what, 5-10 years ago now.
It's
so.
over 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was when she ran against Colleen Gary. That whole thing exploded after.
Right.
Yeah. So let's move on to national politics tonight, gentlemen, and maybe we can get Ron to focus in on the inside, the top of the table here, at the very beginning of our coffee table here. I have two cards that I want us to sign tonight. One is a sympathy card that's going to go to Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi on their total debacle of the impeachment. And the other one is a congratulatory, he's focusing in where they were.
Okay.
Let's try it again. There you
Put it
go.
down there.
We're going to
There we
send.
go.
We're going to send one to the president to congratulate him on his total
Exoneration.
and acquittal. Our president.
Yeah.
What do you say, George?
Bleep you, miss.
I love it. That's absolutely right.
I mean, I have never understood this. It's like, the Republicans did this 20 years ago and it didn't work. So, I mean, like when the Tea Party came in, there were Tea Party people that wanted to impeach Obama, and the leadership said, no, that's a loser. Let's just shut down the government for a couple of weeks. And that was good enough for the Tea Party guys. The Democrats are just like hell-bent on this, and like, what's the point? So we've wasted 5 or 6 months. We're exactly where we were. Everyone knew he wasn't going to be removed. Basically, we've spent all this time and money, and the Democrats have convinced Mitt, and that's it. Why? What have we accomplished? And we talked earlier. They'll probably come back and try to do it again.
3 months.
They spent $40 million on the Mueller investigation,
Which turned up a dry well.
And tens of millions of dollars on the House investigation, which turned up nothing. Right? There's not one impeachable offense.
I mean, there's not even any evidence. I mean,
Nothing.
You looked at all the people they brought in to testify. They were all people giving you second, third-hand information. It was opinion. And the one person who had actually talked to Trump said, Trump told me I don't want a quid pro quo.
I don't want anything. I want nothing.
Right, which he said I interpreted to mean he wanted something. Like, what the heck?
We're dealing in opposites.
You're right.
The Democrats.
It's a secret code he's giving me. I don't know.
The Democrats deal in opposites.
The basic thing here, right, is the president is not a politician.
and I love
And he
it.
doesn't play the game of Washington.
Right.
They can't come in and say, look, we want you to sign this bill, you sign this bill, we'll give you this bill.
Yeah.
He's like, no.
We're going to do it this way, or we're not going to do it.
Right, and you got to give them credit for that. But the
Right.
problem is they probably did that 4 or 5 times, and they're like, this guy is not going to.
Nope.
You can't move anything with him.
Plus, he's exposing all of their corruption. All of their corruption.
Yeah.
Biden's, the Pelosi's, their
and
kids are
you
all
can't
involved
tell me
in
that
stuff.
if Schiff ran for office,
Yep.
and you went up to him and said, "Hey, I got the guy running against you. It's a tight race. Look at the picture. I got naked
Right.
pictures of."
Well,
He's
he
not
did.
going to take that and put that out there.
He did that.
that.
You heard that,
Yeah.
right? With the Russian radio guy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what information do you have?
Yeah, do you
Like
have
anyone,
pictures?
of course,
Do you have
anyone's-
pictures? Can you send me the pictures?
Right.
So tell me something now. Where do the Democrats go now? Where do they go? Where do they go with this?
Well, you know what? I think the normal Democrats are giving up and they're going socialist now. They've got to all.
Well, that's the thing I look
and
at.
that's
is-
going to kill them because no one's going to. We don't want a socialist.
First
country.
off, you have the people that hate Trump are always going to hate Trump. The people that like Trump are going to like the middle of the road people. They've looked at this and like, why can't we get anything done? What is this? So I mean, first off, between peace and prosperity and impeachment fatigue, I think Trump's strong anyway. Now you look at the complete mess that is the Democrat Party, which basically, unless Liz, finishes in the top 2 next week, she's done.
Done.
She, you come out of Iowa,
running out of money quick.
You've got Bernie and Buttigieg. Biden's done.
Boot-edge-edge.
Which they actually do chant at the rally. I listened to his
Boot-edge-edge.
speech. But
And the president coined that.
yeah,
It's amazing.
But Biden's done. Like I say, Liz is hanging on. This is her last shot.
Yeah, she's done.
And then you've got like Bloomberg off in the distance to save the day. So first off,
Steyer, they got enough money
But,
to last it out. But.
Buttigieg is, very nice man, but, he runs a, mid-sized city in Indiana.
100,000 people.
Yeah, it's smaller than Lowell. I mean,
Yeah.
Trump's going to kick his butt. Of the 3, I think they're better off going down in flames with Bernie. It's just kind of like a Goldwater McGovern thing. You're going to lose now, but might help you down the line. Because
Okay.
the Bernie bros are not going to vote for Bloomberg.
Well, gentlemen, we have 20 seconds left. Gordy, why don't you close the show out for us?
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for joining us. As always, folks at home, thanks for watching our show. I hope you like the new weather intro we had. That's great. The guy, he was awesome.
He was awesome.
And we'll be back in 2 more weeks, so make sure you stay tuned for us. And as always, stay connected.
Good night, everybody.